All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Hi.
Hi, everybody.
We are today, as always, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if you can put on comments that you can hear us and see us, that would be great. And I don't know about you, but here in Prague, it was like 35 degrees centigrade, and it's still very, very hot. Mika is
Well,
here. Thanks God, it's Thursday. Welcome back. I
TGIT.
I missed you. So
Yes, we found it.
forgive me if I will do, some makeup.
That's
No.
perfect. That's the body's natural cooling
Yeah,
system. And,
absolutely.
and we're apologizing that we're here on a Thursday. For most of you, you're used to seeing us on a Tuesday. With schedules, it gets quite difficult, and we always
It is.
want to find a way.
It is.
So.
And now I was in French Open. Now I'll be 2 weeks on Wimbledon. So at Wimbledon, so it is a tough to pick up the dates. Okay,
Exactly.
maybe we can kick it off. So Lisa, as a team, is very much around women empowerment and allyship. Which I honestly I didn't know that word exists before I was asked by your Swiss. Well, Scottish. She lives in Switzerland, but she's originally Scottish by your friend to speak somewhere. So
Exactly.
why don't you kick it off?
I would be happy to. So maybe I can give a little bit of a background. For those of you who don't know, I'm actually on the advisory board for Women in Tech Switzerland. So trying to help to see how we can get from younger girls really interested in all these STEM topics to, new joiner, who studies what at university, all the way to then your career and starting a job, to middle management, how do we retain, and then leadership, how do we get women into those leadership opportunities there. And so actually, of course, you'd think, okay, women, we're supporting women. That makes perfect sense. But one of the most important things that we actually do is work on, as Jan said, allyship. And allyship, it's not specific to women. All it really means is, are you there to support and help people who maybe are in a lesser position than you for whatever reason? Maybe it's disabilities, maybe it's, color of your skin, maybe it's natural origin, maybe it's someone who's a little bit junior, but someone where you say, look, I'm an ally to you, I help, I support. And so many people have good intentions about being an ally, right? And many of us, if I asked you, and if it's for men who are joining, or even women who are joining today, if I said, do you support equality for men and women in the workplace? Yeah, great, sounds good, wonderful. The theory of it is not the problem. The problem is we don't actually know how to build that or how to do that. There are a lot of obstacles in the way, both from the systems and the cultures we have to sort of our daily lives. So here today, we're ready to discuss how, very practical terms, theoretical terms, how do we actually get allies? And what Jan was talking about is we invited him to come along as part of a Women in Tech initiative with my friend Michelle Holmes, to be able to put this out and actually run an ongoing webinar series and run a course for men to teach them how to be really good allies. Unfortunately, that course was canceled, but we said we want to take the content out
Absolutely.
anyway.
Yeah.
So here we are.
And I will talk because it's always necessary to understand where you are before you can figure out where you can go. So I will tell you where we are, okay? And one significant study which exists for many, many years, and I used to work as a chair of educational, board for World Economic Forum for Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and many other roles. So I was very close to WEF like for 10 years. So one study they do, I think it's every year or every second year, doesn't matter. It's called gender gap. And I will explain you what gender gap will show, okay? Gender gap measures basically equal opportunities among the genders, right? Right. In terms of the political opportunity, in terms of the education, in terms of the opportunity in economy, in terms of the healthcare, okay?
Yes.
And here is the total number. Those are the numbers worldwide. Total number is 68.5%, which means that we don't have a parity at all, totally.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Now, this is mind blowing. Healthcare, 95%. I think we have almost parity there, right? That it doesn't matter whether you are, women or the man, you're still getting the healthcare, at least in the developed world.
I can discuss that later if you want, Jan.
Oh, well, you can, absolutely. But I'm just, quoting the numbers from the World Economic Forum report. Okay. Education, 96%. Again, I think it can be good. Economy is only 60.5%. And this is the last point, which is mind-blowing, because a lot of political leaders are like having the full mouth of, hey, there should be, gender gap should be closed, whatever. In politics, is 22.5%, which I think are scandalous numbers, Absolutely, right. And what the WEF in the last report says, that, it would take 134 years to get parity if we would go on the same pace, all right? Now, obviously, there are some front runners, some countries doing very good job. Iceland, Finland, Norway, New Zealand, and Sweden. And those countries, what I know, and it was already like 10 years ago when I was still in Microsoft, they have, for example, paternity leave, right? Not only maternity leave, but paternity leave. This is, you talk about culture and policies around, and etc. In my country, it's also possible, but the culture is not there. So I know few people, really, probably 3 people around my friends and circles who did it, right? And what the report says, what we need to do, we need to work on the policies, like what kind of environment we should create. We should take more seriously corporate responsibility. And I'll tell you what we did in Microsoft, which I think was pretty revolutionary, but still it didn't work fully. We need to work on, society and obviously on the culture, because in some countries it's cultural thing. I think in Central Europe, and it's not only about former communistic countries, but I think it's the same. Germany, I used to live there for 7 years. It's the same thing. Then the technical jobs, it's even worse. When I was leaving Czech Technical University in 1986, there were 7, women out of the 100, people class in computing. Okay. Now I deliver some keynote there, and there was like 10 women out of the 100. So very marginal improvement after almost 40 years. Now, what we did in Microsoft, we really try to close the gender gap, and we talk about gender diversity and so on. And I think we were quite successful up to the level of the country managers. Above, unfortunately, I think it's still not, if we talk about gender, it's not still totally like 50-50. And I have a similar experience from the other large companies. So that's kind of the where we are now. Where we want to go, okay? Because you may say, but how do you know that the gender parity or gender diversity is a good thing? We know, because all of those countries I named, Finland, Norway, New Zealand, Sweden, are having very high competitiveness. That's another study which World Economic Forum is doing, which means that more parity means more economical muscles, because you mirror better your customers because those are women and men. You know what I mean, right? You should and it's the same with the race or whatever. So that's kind of where we are, and I think it definitely makes sense, to do it, but it will be long way, because especially I think political elites or political leadership is not ready, as those numbers are showing.
Yes. I could talk for a long time about all of the different elements that make up this topic, but I also want to invite, if you're joining and you have practical questions or you want to know what it's like, for you, also let us know. I think it's really important to start, yes, at the cultural level. You said it actually exactly right. Paternity leave, we know for the countries where people have paternity leave and they take paternity leave, that actually helps with equality and with better equal pay. What we also know is in countries where people work part-time, for example, where there's more parity, where it's men and women both working potentially part-time, we know that also adds to better equality. So there are some systemic cultural things we can do.
This is very interesting from Mika. Parental leave in Finland is mandatory and totally normal. Right?
Exactly.
And I think it's good because kids. I work with the kids. In fact, I'm delivering speech now on UCI on Sunday for 30 top Italian managers. There's some executive course, and name of my speech is what top leaders can learn from the babies. And I will talk about how babies are able to handle mistakes and errors and stuff like that. But this is it. I think we should spend, because kids, their brains are getting wired mostly first 3 years. Like 50% of the synapses are created first 3 years. So, and you can tell me how you can build the career and still be with the child and so on. I think this is about environment. For example, Microsoft, when I was living in Germany, we created, together with local authorities, kindergarten, which was like 50 meters from Microsoft. And it was quite normal that the moms would put kids there, and then, around the noon, they would go there and play with them like for 1 hour, returning back and forth. I used to have Gitte Hero. She was my HR, director. Max was the name of the child, and that Max was there since like 6 months old, and she was going like back and forth between Microsoft and it was work. I said, take your time, whatever, right? It's important. The role of the mom is very important. So
Yeah.
this
Oh,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I
No,
just
there is
want to. Yeah. Oh no,
sorry,
you go.
go
You
ahead.
go. You. All you.
No, there is no one size fits all for sure, because it took some time in Sweden and Finland to create this kind of the culture, but it's definitely there. I remember 2006, I was in advisory board of the Finnish government. Matti Vanhanen, lately on, he was a president, but at that time he was a prime minister. At that time, 2006, there was a 20 members of the Finnish cabinet, 12 women, 8 men. No kidding. Yeah, I never seen that around the world.
No. In general, as you said, the political, it's usually men who join the politics for a variety of reasons. But as we talk about culture and how cultures encourage or don't encourage equality, because I don't really want to say women need to be treated a certain way. I
Yeah.
really want to just talk about fairness and equality, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about, for example, here in Switzerland, it's the easiest place that I can talk about because this is where I've raised my children.
Yeah.
If you are a woman who works 100%, you will go to your office and you will get comments like, you are a raven mother. It translates a little bit silly in English. And what it means is ravens, when they have babies, they literally push the babies out of the nest, and that's how they learn to fly. And it means they don't take care of their babies at all.
Right.
They will say things like, well, why did you have kids at all if you're just going to work and you're not going to be home with your kids?
Yeah.
They will say, I'm so sorry that your partner doesn't earn enough money that you have to work too. And there will be comments like this that you will face on a regular basis. So even if you are brave enough to make the decision, you say, I'm going to show up, I'm going to find the way to, put my kids in the daycare, you're going to face constant criticism. Now, my girls, when, they were growing up and I was working, they would say to me, but mommy, you're the only one that doesn't allow us to come home for lunch. Because here in Switzerland, kids come home for 2 hours during the day and eat lunch at home because the system is set up for one parent, and let's be honest, it's the mom, to stay at home. So the systems, not only the culture, but the systems are in place to reinforce women participate less in the workforce. Absolutely. And the men are the earners. So if we know part of it's culture, but culture can change. The easiest way to change culture, rather than us just saying, come on, you should think differently, is to actually just change some of the systems around. And when I say systems, maybe that sounds big or that sounds scary. I actually just want you to think about nowadays versus, Jan, when you used to travel 20 years ago. Yeah. When you go to a hotel room, you have to put your key in to get the lights to turn on, right? If your key's not in, your lights, and when your key comes out,
that's a good example.
Your key comes out, the lights go off. Look at you saving the environment, but it's not because you had this grand idea to save the environment. It's because that's how the system works. You don't have to think about it. And that's actually what we should be doing when we think about allyship and equality and leadership. We should be thinking about how do we set up systems or nudges that make it just so easy that you're doing it without having to think, I need to do it. right? Now, one of the easiest places that any and every person who's on this call can help with is the recruiting process. It doesn't mean you work in HR. It doesn't mean you are the hiring manager. Anybody can help with the recruiting process. So what I say to hiring managers is make sure when you put in the job description that you run it by either a ChatGPT or a specialist and say, is the language inclusive? Is it going to attract male, female, diverse candidates, neurodiverse candidates, skin color, whatever it is you're looking for? Is the language of the listing correct, right? And even if you're just on the team, you can say, hey, boss, can I have a look before we send that out? And can we do this? Or you're not on the hiring team, you can say to HR, hey, HR, what are you doing about making sure, I'm just curious as a person who works here. And they can give you those answers. The second thing is make sure that you get female candidates back. Most people will say, oh, we didn't find any good female candidates. Actually, it's biased because when you look at the candidates, you often say like, oh, here's a guy who went to the same university I did. Oh, here's a guy who studied, who worked at the same place I used to work. So you find a lot in common, and then you bond with what was in common. Well, men tend to have a lot in common with men and sometimes a little bit less with women. So of course, if you're hiring and you're a male, you might not know why, but you might feel more connection with one over the other.
Right.
So make sure you have, so for example, if you're a male who's hiring, just have someone female look through some of the candidates. Ask your HR person, make sure 50% of the people who go through the first pass, make sure that I'm getting female candidates. When I get down to my last 4, don't put one in as the token woman. Make sure there's 2 who are women who can really then be judged fairly and not be seen as, there's a quota, I'll ignore her and I'll go for the real candidates.
You mentioned quotas. It is and it's a sensitive topic, but we should definitely talk about it. Look, I'm like in between. I think long term, we should have as a companies, we should have a clear targets. Hey, there should be the parity or whatever, you will get there step by step. But the quota, I think companies should still hire the best people, right? This is it. But still have in mind, this is what we want to, achieve. And sometimes it's taking, more time because, for example, if you're hiring for technical positions, there are not that many women because women are not, studying STEM that much. I mean, now it's changing. I mean, in China, this is interesting. I have a general number. I don't have a gender-wise number, but general number. In Europe, we have 15% STEM educated people, and Europe is like 500 million people, more or less, Now, India, 30%, China, 45%, So those are, and you need to, in order to really, and now if we talk about AI and everything else, you need to have some part of the STEM educated population. And I think because it's quite tough to, study science, technology, engineering, math, that's why people are taking the other routes, right? And that's another encouragement. I think we should encourage more, women to study, technical at the technical universities, right?
Yes. And we want more women. We want more diversity, as Mika was saying. Like, again, we're saying allyship. We're talking about women here, but fill in the blank with everything else, because everything we talk about, why is diversity important? Jan said it perfectly. You're going to have, for example, diverse customers. Well, how are your customers going to connect? How are you going to think in advance what your customers want if you don't have someone who has a similar mindset, who has been through the same experiences, who knows that? So, for example, the automotive industry, is very male dominated. But guess what?
The same banks, they talk about it, and then you are like, I did some seminars for the boards, and there's nobody there. There are 11 men, right? Like, guys, you told me 4 years ago, hey, the gender diversity is a big thing for us.
Well, banks, we can talk about women, how to put out your elbows a little bit to get it. But if you take, for example, banking, who really runs the household budgets at home? Largely female. If you look at who buys cars, 75% of the decision makers are females. And yet we have men who are running it, they're missing opportunities. They're leaving money on the table because they aren't necessarily speaking the language of the customers who are buying. So when we talk about diversity, yes, of course, it's nice to be fair and like I want everybody to be treated friendly, but we're also talking just business economics as well. Right? In developing countries, we know when women earn the money, they share with their family, they share with the community, and they really give back. When the men earn, and I'm not being biased, this is just what the statistics say, they use it for themselves and they'll often blow it on things like drinking or, things like that. So many programs in developing countries will often say, how do we get women employed or get women who are going to be running this, because the money is managed in a different way and really brings the whole community up there.
Because there is a definitely like social need, because we are living in the 21st century and it should be like that. But there is economical, there's numerical, proof that it makes sense.
Yes.
The other thing, Lisa, is sport like tennis does not have still equal pay at all. They try now, like on Grand Slams, but because some players were saying, well, we play best of the 5, they play best of the 3, it's less work, like, come on, it's like, okay, they are delivering babies and you are like having a good time, like drinking after that, right? So what?
Yes. Well, in sports, they say, well, listen, women's sports just aren't watched enough. So, there's not enough revenues that come from advertising. There's not enough ticket sales that come from it. And so what they did in America is they said, actually, for example, the U.S. women's soccer team is quite popular, more popular than the male soccer teams.
There is a movie on Netflix, absolutely.
Okay, great. So they started saying, and same with, college basketball, like they're starting to say, okay, then let's get more interested in women's sports. You start featuring it more. You give us more opportunities to follow, to know the names. Who's Caitlin Clark? What does that look like? And then people will show up for those sports. And so again, more economic factors. When people show up both to the male-dominated sports and to the female-dominated sports, there's more revenue coming in, and then we can do equal pay. Let's not just rest and say, okay, well, they don't, they're not worth as much. Instead, we say, how do we make it so that it's economically viable? This is the language we have to be speaking, because as you can see, and especially what's going on currently, there was a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion stuff that was happening, and then sort of COVID happened. There was Black Lives Matter, and it came up to the top of importance. And now people are very anti. They have a backlash. They're saying, look, I don't want to give up my power to all these other people. I don't want them taking my jobs. I don't want them taking, just leave me to prosper and forget diversity and stuff like that. And this is, if there's anything anyone takes from today, I just want to say, so important. When people rise up, whether it's women, whether it's people of color, it doesn't make your power less. All you have to do is grow the pie of what's available economically, and there's opportunity for everybody to keep winning. So it doesn't mean, okay, well, now that we let a woman join the leadership team, now there's no spot for me. Well, then let's find creative ways to give more power. Let's start new companies. CEOs are now doing a one and done thing, right? They serve once, they say that was way too much pressure, burnout, like that, I'm good. Great. So have your couple of years where you cycle in, let a woman come in, cycle in for 2-3 years, she'll be out and a man can come in, right? We can find ways to make it work in harmony. We're not saying women need to take over and overpower the world. We're saying let's just have an equal, fair place. And quotas, in my opinion, are not the way to do it, because people will then question, why is she there? A quota?
Exactly. I think
we want winning.
It's the opposite, yeah.
We want talent. We want people who earned it to be there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Good. We've got a lot of comments on the side here.
Okay.
especially one around women's beach volleyball, which is
I'll put it in case of sports, no man can be ladies playing beach volleyball. No. I agree. That's it is. They play, in fact, at Olympics. They play very close to the Eiffel Tower. I mean, men and the women, and it was like at least 15,000 people. It was really good, very well attended. The beach volleyball.
Yes.
It's interesting sport because it was not like 30 years ago nobody knew about it, but recently it became really very popular.
Yeah. Did they still wear bikinis? I don't know.
I think
Is that
so.
why it's so popular?
I think that's what he meant. Right? Yeah, that's for sure. So maybe we can touch where, like, if there's some space, we can look for this allyship, like not only in the company, but like publicly with the other organizations, and so on. Right? I mean, even like I was shocked that what Lisa said. I was invited on like pre-workshop because you guys wanted to basically create some seminar to teach men, right, how to do it. And
Yeah.
there was already, for the pre-workshop, there was nobody interested in that, So it shows
It
something.
says a lot.
And it's Switzerland, which is very developed country, right? So.
Yeah, well, I can tell you the honest truth for why people don't take an allyship class.
Okay.
First of all, we keep saying men need to learn how to be allies.
Right.
Guess what? Women need to learn how to be allies too. The exact same biases that men have, women have as well.
Absolutely.
If I said to you, let me do a quick check for everybody who's on the call, listening right now. If I said, picture a doctor, what comes to mind? Usually a picture of a man. For men and women, it's a picture of a man. If I said picture a CEO, who comes to mind? It's usually a picture of a man, male or female. We hold the same biases in our heads.
Oh, yeah.
We also hold the same fears. If you ask me why are men sometimes, hesitant to do allyship, and they say, I don't know the right words. I don't want to look like I'm patronizing anybody, talking down to them. I don't know how to do it. I'm afraid to make a mistake or get it wrong. And then you ask women, why don't you do more allyship? It's the same, right? Nobody really knows how to do allyship right. But what I would say is it's better to do something and maybe mess up along the way and learn from it than to do nothing because you're afraid of doing it wrong.
Absolutely. And those are small things. What I, for example, learned probably like 20 years ago, whenever I speak like he or she can do. You know what I mean? Like using,
exactly.
And those are like small signals you are sending. And if you are a leader of, many thousand organization, I mean, people will start to do it step by step. But I think you need to, as a leader, you need to lead by example. And you will screw up something. Satya Nadella, I remember when I left Microsoft, right? Satya Nadella, before, like 1 month before I left Microsoft, Satya Nadella, I think, was a Washington Post or New York Times, whatever. He was a relatively new CEO coming from India. He was living for many years already in the US, but with like Indian background. And they asked him, if women should ask for salary increase, and the answer was no, they should rely on karma. I can tell you, all like 10, 15 years of our work on the gender diversity was gone, obviously. And then he apologized, and everything was because people were like, okay, but it's a cultural thing, like, because he was like, he was probably nervous or whatever. And I remember I was already out of the Microsoft, and he was going to the World Economic Forum, and they still call me on, is there some rude Q&A we can use? I said, absolutely. He should make sure not talk about karma. He can talk about karma on different occasions, but not on his salary increase for women, And it didn't happen. And it was a big, fuck up. But then obviously, I mean, we recovered from that, right? So it can happen,
Yeah, and there are many things you can do. So first of all, sometimes people try to blame women and say, well, the women don't ask, okay? So if that's true, the women aren't asking, then I would say work up, your skills for how to negotiate, walk in feeling powerful. So many times we know just from the research, not any one individual, we know from the research, women wait until they think they meet all of the criteria for a job description to feel I'm confident enough to apply. And men are like, if I hit 2 or 3, like, why not? Go for it, right? And we know from hiring that men often get hired on their potential. We've seen he has a track record. We think he'll be able to make the leap. And women then get asked for the proven experience first. So it's a little bit from the top, it comes from them that they expect more, but then the women also aren't necessarily taking the risk. So women shouldn't be afraid to negotiate. Now, the backlash, what they're afraid of is that someone's going to say, oh, you're greedy, you're not worth it. And that might happen. And so women need to prepare that it is going to be a very hard uphill battle to try to take, an equal place. And that happens with any battle for equality. It's not just against women. Any group that has more power and any group that has less power, of course, the people who have more power are generally going to try to maintain it because it's working for them, right?
Absolutely.
Whether they do it on purpose.
It's how your brain works. You want to have, very high, post in the hierarchy, right? Because in the past it was about more food and better shelter. Today it's about, better position, more money, more fame, whatever, but this is it, how we work. Absolutely.
Exactly. So, women might be told, oh, you're greedy. Oh, you're a quota woman. And I just want people to remember, this is not personal. Anyone who has a higher level of power over someone with a lower level of power is going to try to find a way, and they're going to pick the easiest target. So for example, for women, they might go for your appearance. They might go for, you're not very nice, you're a bitch, right? But they're not really doing it about you. It's not even about you. They're really going for what's the easiest low-hanging fruit to keep you smaller. And we do that, with people who are overweight. We do that with people who are of a different diversity, a background, as someone who didn't study at a university when you did study at university. It happens all the time because, as Jan said, we're humans and we're going to try to keep our space.
Absolutely.
And we need to remember, male or female, young in your career versus older, oh, you don't have enough experience. There's always going to be someone who's trying to put you down so that they can feel bigger. And please, everybody, don't take that personally. That's not about you. That's about them.
That's how the brain works. Yep, absolutely.
And if you let them take that power, then guess what happens? You stay stuck in a lower power position. Not just your role in the company, but you stay stuck. You actually believe you're less than or not important or not ready or whatever it is that they're saying. So don't allow that to happen. Allyship, again, is about equality and bringing people up. We want everybody to be able to move forward.
One recommendation, and it doesn't matter whether you are, man or women, because you Lisa, said one very important thing. If you want to progress in your career, in your life, and there are some people who are really like above you, whatever, with the knowledge, with the function, whatever, you should look eye to eye. That's what I learned. I mean, I was never like, I would never be that good like Bill Gates. No, my brain was like, it's great. I'm like 35 and I'm working with Bill Gates. That's great, right? And you know what? This is it. And that's the same thing I share with my, athletes and so on. You need to talk. If you look into the people like, Bill or whatever, right? It's all bullshit. And then you start to doubt yourself, right? Yeah. If you want to have some doubts, doubt your doubts. Learn how to doubt your doubts. This is it. Because majority of the doubts are bullshit. It's a bullshit bingo of your amygdala. Nothing else,
Exactly.
Right? I just was preparing a couple of tennis players for Wimbledon, and we talk about how comes that, I'm like playing one set great and then I have a doubt. What are the doubts? You are like losing 2 balls. You still have 6-2 in the first set and it's 2-2 in the second set. And you are like, what are the doubts? You move to the next ball. That's the new opportunity. And that's the way you learn, right?
Exactly. And what I say is what we know for helping to bridge things and helping people to be equal is things like personal branding. So women might feel uncomfortable putting themselves out there. But the thing is, we know from the science, here are the things that work to get you promoted. Right. People know your name. People know to say your name. People know all the good work you've done. Don't sit back and be quiet. Have people aware of who you are and what you're doing. Here's what else is really important. When we talk about how people can be good allies, sponsor people who are in your organization, or it doesn't even matter in work, it can also be outside of work. Sponsoring means when a project comes up, when you hear of an idea, when you hear of a nonprofit board looking for something, when you hear of a house cleaner that somebody needs, are you going, I know who I can recommend to you, you got to put this person on the project. You're really saying, putting yourself out there and saying, here's the
Absolutely.
person.
And you mentioned one important point, and that's the personal brand. And I think people, whether women or men, they really underestimate the power of like personal story and personal brand. Right? Because to be honest, the CV today or the bio, it's like usually it's one A4 and it's full of the data. It's fine, but I'm interested in the story, in your personal story, and how people work. I mean, all stories, all fairy tales, for example, are like there is a hero overcoming some obstacles, tough obstacles, right? Some, in life or whatever, fighting some, dangerous situations, whatever. And that's exactly what I want to hear during the interview. I wanted to hear your ability to perform very well under the tough situation. That's what the personal brand, is all about. The personal, story. And you said it rightly. It's about, your name. It's good. A lot of people, oh, my name is Milfai. You go and you should say Jan Milfai. Okay. And, have a firm, handshake and stuff like that. Those are small things, but it's created all, personal brand, if you will, right?
Yeah. And the executive presence, showing up like you belong there, not like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for allowing me, showing up as equal and asking people to help you. Even in my
exactly. We are very afraid to ask for the help because we see, hey, I'm vulnerable. No, come on, I was stupid enough. I was not asking for help, and I ended up in the mental hospital because I was like, everything me, whatever, right? And obviously I didn't have enough, mentors. That was the main reason. But this is it. You ask for the help, and you would be surprised, even like famous people, much better people than you, if you just send an email, say, hey, this is what I do. Majority I mean, look, I asked 10 top people when we did, with Melina, it's almost 10 years ago, Positive Leader, which is now in 13 different languages, right? I asked 10 different people, and only Mary McEllie, she was a former president in Ireland. She was my boss in that EU group. She said, Jan, I'm not doing it. I will do later on. I will read the book and write some article, but I am not doing it, simply, right? And I understood it. But all other people, like, Jeff Rakes, Deepak Chopra, all other people said, yeah, we will do it. Obviously, you need to have good relationship with those people. They should remember you for some good thing, not that you would go and say, Deepak Chopra, no way, he's too much spiritual for Microsoft. I would never say that, right? Like some people would say that in Microsoft, but it was a great, we hosted him for the first time 2010. It was, Soul of the Leadership is one of his book, and he published it that year. It was mind-blowing, mind-blowing. Because he talked about the fact that leader is the soul of the organization. And it was amazing.
And this is why it's so important to feel comfortable approaching people, feel comfortable asking for help, ask them for favors. By the way, research shows if you ask for a small favor, they like you more, because if they did the favor for you, unconsciously, they think, I must like this person. And they actually feel good helping you because they feel like, oh, I've done something good for something else. So overall, you've come closer, you've made them feel good, and you've built a relationship.
You bet. Yeah.
And on the flip side, when you are in a position of power, so when we're talking about allyship, and power doesn't have to mean you're the CEO. It can be, you're the intern, but it doesn't matter. If you're somewhere with the position of power to help somebody, to mention a name, to say, let's put them on this project. Oh, let's take a stretch. Let's take a gamble on this person. I had a boss when I was trying to switch over to a job in marketing. I was not qualified for it. Okay. The woman fought for me. She was a female boss. She said, I know Lisa, I've worked with her
Yeah,
before. I
okay.
really want her on my team. They said, no, can't. She doesn't have the years of experience. She went back and said, yeah, but she has an MBA. Could the MBA count for the years of experience? They said, yeah, no, but we really want someone with this. Okay, could we do it this way? Could we do this? Could we get her salary to this? She went to battle for me. And only because she did that did I get the job. Anyone else would have said, okay, well, boss said I can't do it, so
Absolutely.
bye. And she didn't tell me that until maybe a year after I had started the role. And I'm forever grateful because she opened that door. She took a personal effort, a personal risk, let's say,
Yeah.
on getting me the job. But that's what it means to really advocate for somebody. So many companies that we go into, they say, yeah, we're looking to hire females, and then no CVs
I
come
think
through.
today, Lisa, today,
Yeah.
give me 1 second because it's raining and I have
Oh,
open windows
no,
here,
okay.
just talk.
Okay, yeah. So I think today, like, there's companies who say and who talk the talk. Yes, we advocate for women. Yes, we want to do it. And then there are companies who actually do it. And that's what I want you to really take away from
Yeah,
today's session. Not you, Jan, but you, everybody who's
right.
listening. Just do it. Don't worry if it's right. Don't worry if it's perfect. Don't worry if it's every person in the world. You don't need to save all mankind. Do it for one person once and start that process for you. Mentor,
And,
sponsor.
and I think, experience is overrated today because what is experience? We are living in so many changes today, right?
Yeah.
So you need to be flexible. You need to know how to use artificial intelligence, how to form the issue, how to write the prompt and stuff like that, right? Because I mean, I was, I always have like, couple of days thinking about some, words and some terms. Okay. And I was recently thinking about the wisdom. What is the wisdom, right? And to me, wisdom equals your experience multiplied by your ability to learn from that experience, because there is a lot of experienced people, but they are not able to learn from that experience. I know a lot of professors or scientists, but they are not able to share what they know with the others because they talk too much, high language or whatever, right? So you really need, there is experience, but then your ability to use that experience in the real life, that's the wisdom to me.
Yes, that's exactly right. And the thing is, so many times we sit in a meeting or we sit in it doesn't even matter, like a church group. Like I'm talking business, but it's really any and every situation that we're in. And, sometimes some people, let's talk about extroverts, are very, they think fast, they speak fast, they
Right.
know what they want to say, they're on top, and so not every voice gets heard. And of
Absolutely.
course, we know from group dynamics, oftentimes the loudest voice, the most insistent voice, the group ends up sort of following that voice. So what we can do is in every group, and especially if you're the loud, insistent one, is call in other voices. Hey, we haven't heard from Sasha in a while. Sasha, what are you thinking here? Hey, Lisa, I think you got interrupted earlier when, Matt cut in. What were you going to say? I'm really curious if you could finish that sentence. Like, I want to hear more. And if we just make it a practice to get everyone's voices in, or to make sure that not just the loudest, most strong voices get heard, you'll also find a really good way to get
And
deeper insights. Yeah.
what I learned in different dynamics, because I was sitting in the majority of the boards I was sitting in were like non-profit, but really big boards like ISEC International, Junior Achievement, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And what I realized in Microsoft and out of the Microsoft, what is very powerful, if you speak as a last one, you somehow summarize the other speakers. You will say, follow up what you say, or to be complementary to the other. And it's a very nice, and you will make your point. You will still get, other people on your board. And that's the way how you create that. But it takes a little bit, more seniority. To be honest, when I was young, I wanted to speak the first,
Exactly. You're so busy fighting for your space, right?
Absolutely. Because I was like, oh, if not now, then meeting is short, I need to do it.
Yes. And this is why I said it's so important for people to understand with power, there's enough power in the room. Sometimes you're the most powerful person, not by saying the most important things, but by being the one who all of a sudden is the facilitator.
Exactly.
Calling this person,
Then
calling
put
this
it
person.
together.
And then you synthesize and you summarize and you put it in. You've gotten, people are grateful that you've called them in. They feel like they've co-created it as a team. You come out somehow as the leader because you're basically calling on people, right? And saying, oh, this and this, oh, great, this, and here's how we can do this. You've naturally taken a leadership position. So there are ways to do that even early career that do not put your power down and bring your power up. This is what's so important.
Yeah, when I'm teaching my seminars, it's usually, if I do seminars, it's between 15 to 20 people, because it's like, it's kind of the one to few. Yeah. Yesterday, I addressed the group like 50 managers. It was more. But, usually what I do, 15 to 20 people, they introduce themselves, what they do, what they, expect from the course. Where did they learn about it? Then I'm saying, what I'm hearing, you are from that, vertical, you are also, some medical doctors, whatever, and you are maybe at a crossroad, or you want to do your job better, whatever. And they hear what they want to hear from me, right? And then I'm also able to reflect in my teaching, to reflect who they are. So I try to shape up a little bit my message. Right.
Exactly.
And, so, and it's much better than if you're like shooting, immediately. It's not necessarily great way, to create a rapport. They call it rapport, right, in psychology.
Yeah. And I love that you're talking about how fast or slow things go, because a lot of times why people aren't, stronger allies for women or minorities or whomever is, again, not because they don't care, not because they don't want to, but they have 10,000 things on their to-do list. They need to get it done as fast and as efficient as possible. And if I can work with John, who thinks like I do, and we just agree really fast and we just get things done, and he always knows what I mean when I say this, it just feels easier. It is less resistance, less arguing, less getting people that. So we will naturally be headed in that direction. And that's a problem. I understand why in the short term it feels like, oh, it feels so good. But that's when on the back end, so many times you go, oh, we didn't think about that. Oh, we didn't catch that. Oh, if we'd only had this person tell us, we wouldn't have wasted 6 months and 100,000 on that project because we didn't do this. So while it might feel heavier or like, oh, it's slowing me down, it's frustrating, they think differently, they don't get it, or the cultural differences, in fact, it is actually getting you to a better product. And I really want to make sure that slowing down doesn't feel bad for people. No. It's slowing down to speed up in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. Important. And in fact, there's a great book, Think Fast and Slow, from Daniel Kahneman. Exactly. And this is exactly because, in some experience, if you have some, great experience, you can think really fast, but sometimes you think slow, and it's also good. And because you can think, deeply, and you can use like artificial intelligence, because the artificial intelligence is the majority of the people, I realize, are using it like better Google search, right? And then there is a much more. You know what I do now? Now I do, like before the Wimbledon, what I started to do, like I have a profile of coach, I have a profile of tennis player, okay? Like from Gallup, StrengthsFinder, and I'm putting there what I know about them. And then I'm asking artificial intelligence, show me how they can use who they are in the best way in coaching, in tennis, okay? Where they are the same, where they are similar, where they are different, and how they can work together. And it's really, amazing. We did like 3 pairs, top, players, and it is amazing what you can do. That's one thing. And the other thing is, I'm sometimes doing questions like, hey, if I would not be mental coach of that, person with that, skills and strengths, and on my place would be Buddha, but what Buddha would say. And it is amazing, because this is the way how you learn from the best, thought leaders, even from the past, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure, as we're getting close to time, what I really want to make sure that we talk about, because you mentioned it earlier, I didn't have it planned, but it feels so important. You mentioned healthcare for men, women, and you said, access it should be roughly the same. Right. So, statistically. But the reality is most drug trials are not conducted on women for a
Oh, really?
very pragmatic
I didn't
reason.
know that. I didn't know that. That's
Makes
interesting.
perfect sense, but here's why. For women, they have hormonal changes throughout the month.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And so if the drug works one way but works a different way, but it interacts, we don't know. There's too many variables that then shift. So it's easier for drug companies to say, oh, we just tested on
Oh,
men, and
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That's true.
more and
It's
more.
easier way, for them.
It's
Absolutely.
easier, it's more
Yeah.
consistent, and it helps them to get better, results, to understand the results. The problem is then the medicine goes into the real world, and then they see, oh, it has a different impact on women, or it has. So in that sense, they are now working to have more clinical trials that have women
Which is
involved.
good.
Right, and it should be, right? Half the population.
There's a lot of Swiss, drug companies, right? So
There are.
absolutely.
Sure. And then also, there are a lot of times that symptoms are different for men than they are for women. And a lot of doctors or hospitals don't know the differences. So a
Mm-hmm.
woman can come in and say, I'm having bad stomach pain. And they're like, oh, okay, you
Right.
look fine, go home. And then they go home and die because they're having a heart attack. For
Mm-hmm.
men, the heart attack is pain in the left arm, chest
Oh,
pain,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's clear. That's what doctors are looking for a heart attack. That's not how women show their symptoms. So a lot of women, it's like maybe the number two, maybe number one killer of women is a
Mm-hmm.
heart disease and heart attacks, because they get incorrectly diagnosed or
Oh, yeah.
incorrectly
Yeah.
treated.
Definitely.
So it's these kinds of things where we say, look, healthcare for women is still not equal, even
Mm-hmm.
if we can get
Okay,
treatments.
that's what you meant before I talk about it. Okay, got it.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
even if we get treatments, number one, they're not designed for our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, crash test dummies are all designed for male bodies. They don't look at smaller women. They don't look at lighter weights. They don't look at hip structure for women when they were doing the crash tests. So a lot of systems for health are really built for men. And again, it was just pragmatic. It was just easier for them. They weren't
For
saying we
sure.
hate women, we want to exclude women.
No, 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 no. I
But
don't think so. But it was like,
no.
yeah, easier decision
And
and easier
that's
solution.
and that's the biggest risk for women, is that allyship, just it's easier, it's faster, it's more convenient to go the way we always know, to go with the culture we've always done. That's how we've always done it. It's how we grew up. And if we don't actively, consciously change the systems around us, think about how to do things differently, then we can have all the best hearts and intentions, but it'll be 136 years until that pay gap is closed.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So, the things you can do, again, for anyone who's on the call, men, women, whomever, and it's not just at work, it can be equality at home. We know one of the best indicators of how well a woman is going to do working outside of the home is how equal they are in the household at home. How much work is the male doing at the home?
Right.
Or is the woman working 100% and then doing 100% of the home care? That's burnout, right? It doesn't work. So the more equality you can have in the household, the more equality you can have about people being able to work. A big topic in Switzerland, again, systematically, we are currently taxed in Switzerland, as is different for every country. We're taxed together, joint, as a married couple, for example. My husband and I are taxed joint. Well, that means what happens is, and believe me, people in Switzerland earn good salaries. Usually it's the male who earns a good salary. Then the woman, took off to take care of the kids. She comes back. All of a sudden she comes back, and now they are taxed at double, so they have the higher income bracket. Therefore, they have much higher taxes. So instead, she's working 60%, if she goes to 100%, but basically the entire difference of what she's earning now goes to taxes, because they're now in a higher tax bracket.
Absolutely, yeah.
Then the women say, why bother? I'm just not going to work. It's not worth it for me to work more or work more hours.
I understand. It's not, supporting like, gender gap solution, whatever you call it, because that's stupid, basically.
So exactly. So, and again, because of the systems in Switzerland and the culture in Switzerland, it's usually the woman who then reduces, but that also affects then how is your retirement package, because your retirement is based on how much you worked, how much you put in over time. And so that imbalance also happens. So for all of us, we can advocate for better systems
Right.
governmentally, systematically, but even in our daily lives, just doing small things to have a woman speak up in the room, invite their voices in, sponsor someone. When I'm going to look for presents that I'm going to buy people, I say, what's a female-owned business that I can support?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. It's the small things that you can do. When I have clients who say, so for example, AI is a very hot topic, right? I know plenty of consultants who are in AI, but I also know female consultants. So I'm going to put them forward first when people are saying, where's the demand? I'm saying here.
Yeah,
And again, qualified, good, still reputationally someone I feel comfortable with, but I'm going to put that female candidate forward because they have fewer opportunities than someone else. So small ways that you can advocate, help, support make a very big difference.
that's for sure. Yeah.
Good. We didn't have any other questions that were coming in, although we had a lot of comments coming in over the
Yeah,
years. This must be
yeah, yeah.
about us getting older.
There is a yeah. Nika is saying I enjoy working with women way more than the men. On the other hand, majority of the few toxic bosses I have had women do. I think it's the toxicity or toxic relationship are distributed, equally probably. That was super surprising. I don't think it's surprising. It's the same, women or men. You have a lot of good people. There are some people who are not good, right? So that's for sure.
Yeah, well, what happens is people who want to get to the top, male, female, it doesn't really matter. You are going to elbow a little bit, okay? We all think we want some very nice people, but the reality is how power works is they're the loudest, they're the
Well,
strongest, they're the most insistent, they personal brand themselves, they put themselves in the situations where they can get recognized. And so male or female, they're going to have usually a bit of a tougher, so you heard Jan saying, hey, in the earlier meetings, I'm fighting for my
yeah,
airtime. It's not to be mean, right? I'm not saying they're actively stabbing, but they're going to make space for themselves. And now what happens when it's females or minorities is they have to fight double as hard to get to the
sure.
space. And so sometimes what happens is that then hardens them, poisons them, makes them, think, oh, I have to be toxic to everybody. And so you'll often see people who had to really over fight for their position that then have a very aggressive attitude towards everyone around them. It's not to say every female, it's not to say every minority,
Yeah.
it's not to say every male, but that's generally the pattern. It comes from the feeling that they had to fight to get there, that they have a fighter spirit, and that comes out often, especially with people who are below them.
No, I agree. I've got one, football player, and he was like alternated, all the time, right? So he was not playing sometimes, and he was not very happy. And I told him, I said, you know what? If you will play like Ronaldo, if you play top level, nobody will doubt that you are the best option because that's the way to avoid politics, to be really good, right? Look, I did probably 7 or 8 different jobs during my 22 years in Microsoft, and I never lost. When there was, more candidates, I never lost. I mean, I was good, but I also prepared all the time, like for Olympic Games, for those
Yes.
roles, right? And this is it. And it was not like I was like proactively talking to my potential boss. This is the way how I would like to do my job based on my skills and what I know about the organization, whatever, right? And
Yes.
and this is it. But you also need to build. That's what about allyship. You need to build on your way. Like I was traveling with Gates, so we were good friends with Jeff Rakes and other people. By the way, I'll be in Seattle on in September because it's like 50th anniversary and 30 years of alumni program. So
Oh,
we are
cool.
getting, I did a couple of, guys and like there are more guys, but we have like one day special, like the former leadership team, and
I
that
love
will be
that.
interesting.
Good.
So
I was going to say, final note, give space for women.
absolutely,
That's
that's
sort of
important.
my big
Whatever, get
advocate for
space.
them, sponsor them. Yeah, invite them. Say, please say more,
Yeah,
speak up. Haven't we heard from you yet? Don't always talk, like not you, Jan, right? But everybody, give them space and let
Exactly.
them take up and fill the space alongside you.
Exactly.
There's enough opportunity in the world. You will not lose power. We will all gain more power together.
Okay. All right. So, guys,
Thanks
good to
everyone
see
for
you
coming.
again, and looking forward to see you
See
next
you next
time.
time. Take care.
Bye bye. Hoppala.